Welcome to worship. We're glad you're here this evening. Would you stand as we worship together?
Times I failed, still your mercy remains. Should I stumble again, still I'm caught in your grace. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. Control, consume me from the inside out. Let justice and praise become my embrace, to love you from the inside out. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. And the cry of my heart
And had a chance, wave at the person next to you who's been socially distanced from you.
If you're on the internet,
Wave to,
that could get weird.
yes, wave to yourself in the screen. How's everybody doing? Thank you for being here. Welcome to the table. We're excited for a few reasons. One of the things that that we've been talking about, and if you don't know who I am, I'm David. This is Todd.
Hi there.
And we've been talking about the format for this service, and so what the approach that we've had for the last few months has been, we just sort of have we have a traditional service at one point on Sunday, and then we have a contemporary service. And what we've been thinking about is not just doing a contemporary service. What we've been thinking about doing is doing more of like a talk show kind of podcast piece to this.
So like Ellen,
No, not like Ellen. Well,
can I be Justin Bieber?
you can be Justin Bieber, yes.
Okay, cool.
Is that so? But what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to be more conversational in terms of the message, in terms of what we say, in terms of the things that we're talking about, and all of that. So we're going to try it, and so part of what we're going to ask you to do is to be honest with us afterwards. If you're watching this online, be honest with us, give us some honest feedback. But just to sort of make this more of what we've had intention for this space to be. When we talk about the table, one of the things that has always sort of enchanted me is the approach of the table versus just pews, just sort of having everybody sort of sit down and look up front and listen for 20 minutes and check your watch at 12 minutes and 14 minutes and all that.
Hopefully the guy isn't boring.
And hopefully the guys are not boring.
Okay.
But just to sort of make it a conversation. So there will be times where we're going to ask you questions. There's going to be times where we're going to want some feedback from you. But we're going to see how this goes. So real quick, there's a few things in terms of announcements. We have 2 huge events coming up in the next few weeks. The first one is date night. It is Sweetest Day, which is October 17th. And we're very excited about that. In your bulletin, if you were here with us, inside your bulletin there's a little announcement. If you go to our website, if you're online, there's all kinds of information about it. So we're going to have date night in this room, in this space. We're going to have a meal that is catered by Scratch. We're going to have music. We're going to have fun, games, door prizes. All you need to do is bring someone with you. You need to bring your sweetest person. So one of the things that we just found out this week, we're also going to have the local high school is going to come, and they have a sort of a glee type group.
And we just confirmed this.
We just confirmed this.
We
So
just confirmed it.
they're going to come do some dinner music for us. So we're excited about that.
David and I
We're
were
excited about
originally on the docket.
that. We were going to sing.
Yeah, we were.
And
we were going to do a duet thing.
that did not work
No.
out.
Well, it would have just been awkward.
It would have been. Well, who's leading? Who's doing?
I would have let you lead.
Okay. All right. Very good.
I would have just come along and cleaned it up.
Yes. So, but if you have this little insert, on the insert there is information on how to register. And so if you've not yet registered, we hope that you will do that.
And you get to choose your food. You can choose from fish, steak, or pork chops.
Very good.
It's gonna be
Very
good.
It's going to be very good.
I'm into that.
If you haven't eaten at Scratch yet, you need to do that. That's one of the things you need to do.
The East Main Burger.
Yes.
That's the thing you get every time.
It is all
Except
I get.
Misty, if you're listening to this, he never gets that. Ever.
No.
Ever.
No. It's amazing. It's like a burger.
And if Kelly's listening to this, which Kelly's in the room, no, I get salad
It's
every
got
time.
onion rings. It's got barbecue all on the burger.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. So
Every time we get salad.
yes,
Every time.
at the steakhouse, that's all we get is
That's,
salad.
yep.
Yeah. All right. The other event that is coming up is called Trunk or Treat. It's on Halloween Day. It's going to be October 31st. And so we're very excited about that. We're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to plan something that's fun, but we're also trying to plan something that's safe. We're trying to plan something that is socially distanced.
And you can do these things even in COVID season.
You can.
You can. This is possible.
So we're
We've
going to
learned
try to make sure that all of the cars are spaced out. If you've never been to a trunk or treat before, the basic idea is that everybody sort of sets up a station in their car. So they decorate their cars. They put costumes on. I've seen some cars that are very themed. In the past, we had a Star Wars themed car. That was our car, and so we had it all decked out
That
for
makes
Star
sense.
Wars. But that's something we're looking forward to. And so if you are interested in coming, we first of all want you to come. Second, if you want to bring your car, if you want to be one of the people who's going to distribute candy, we would simply ask you to obviously sign up, make sure you bring a costume, wear a costume, and that you bring just tremendous amounts of candy.
All the candy. Yeah,
So-
we need candy. So if you just want, if you're like, Todd, David, nah, fam. Like I'm not into doing the whole trunk thing. If you just want to bring me candy, David keeps eating it.
Yes.
You
Bring
can donate
two.
candy. You can bring it to the church office. I got to replenish it. He keeps eating it.
It's a third for me, and then 2/3 for everybody.
No,
else.
that's right. It's like he takes his tax.
Yes.
It's a tax.
Which
It's
we're
like
going to
the-
talk about that.
It's like the food tax. It's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, we are.
So those are the two big things that we wanted to sort of draw your attention to. All right, we want to start off with prayer. Does anyone have any prayer requests? Anything that we need to be thinking about? And if you are online, there should be an opportunity for you right on the screen to be able to enter in a prayer request. But if there's anything that you guys, anything we have to keep in mind this evening? No,
Crickets.
we're good. Oh, wow. Okay.
That's awesome.
Very good. Well, we'll certainly. This is what a choice to make during this season to go into I'm going to go into nursing. I would think there'll be people like, oh, I'm scared of that. I'm not doing that right now. So if you're already in, you're kind of stuck. But to make that choice, is very admirable.
Or the person
So-
that has to clean things in hospitals.
Oh yes.
Can you imagine
no,
that job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's risking your life every
That'd be
day.
a job.
So, any other prayer requests? Anything else we need to be keeping in mind this evening? All right. Well, let's pray.
Those goes.
God, we do thank you for this evening. We thank you for the opportunity to gather around the table. God, we sort of leave everything that we've brought into this place. We leave it to the side. We ask you to prepare us for the week ahead. We have challenges in our personal life. We have challenges in our professional life. We have challenges in the world that is around us. The media continues to bombard us and raise our stress level. And so we pray that this time, this evening, would be an opportunity for us to leave all of that to the side and to approach you in an act of worship, to approach you and just to allow your Spirit to speak clearly to us. God, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for what you're going to say to us. And all this we pray in your name. Amen. All right. I want to start with this. Have you ever considered, when you think of the word Pharisee, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind when you think of the word Pharisee? So you could start us off, but if anybody wants to answer it. When you think of the word Pharisee, certainly that's not it's not a good word if somebody were to show up and give you that title. What would you if someone called you that? What would you think? What would you think?
Well,
if somebody
what's
called you that?
interesting to me is actually being a Pharisee back then. It gets a bad rap. It
Yes.
does get a bad rap. But it was actually kind of a cool thing for them. It meant that you were a really holy person. But we kind of know it now as being like I had a teacher in high school that was a Pharisee, very Pharisaical, a rule follower, but not only a rule follower, a jerk about it. And you were a bad person if you didn't do these things, and just made the environment horrible. And I think that all of us kind of have a person like that in our lives.
Right.
That's kind of it's kind of what a Pharisee is to me. Just a person who's miserable. They don't have fun. They are rule following all the time. And if you don't follow the rules, you're a bad person, and they're going to shame you for it.
All right. How many of you have ever run into a Pharisee? You've had somebody be judgmental towards you. Anybody who's had that? Oh, yeah. Raise both and your feet, too. How do you handle that when you have somebody who approaches you in a sort of a judgmental, Pharisaical way? Have you ever had somebody come judge you?
No, because I'm a perfect person.
No, stop it.
I'm a rule breaker by nature, so all the Pharisees,
Really?
all the rule, all the
Really?
rules, all the breaking of rules.
Okay.
And so all of the Pharisaical people in my life, they judge me. Yeah, they do. They're like, Todd, why do you go to Starbucks for 5 hours during the day? Why do you do that? And I'm like, well, why don't you do that?
It's true.
Why don't you do that? So yeah, I've definitely ran into people like that who judge me.
How
Always
do you
about
handle
Star
it though?
Wars.
How do you handle it when you get judged? Like you can kind of tell. You can tell that they're being judgmental. What do you?
I just go to Starbucks anyways.
Okay. Wait, you're only judged for Starbucks?
I'm judged for so many things.
Okay.
So many things. No. So typically, what I do is I rebel, but that's because my personality is that if there's conflict like that. By the way, this isn't the best way of handling this. It's not.
Okay.
I just rebel. Like whatever the thing is that they're judging me for, I just kind of do the opposite. I just want to watch their head explode.
So you purposely do.
I purposefully go the extra mile.
to over. Okay. All right, that makes sense.
I do.
How about you? If you've had anybody judge you, how do you sort of handle that? Anybody, just throw it out.
Anybody handle it not well? Anybody handle it well?
Yeah. If you handle it well, how'd you handle it? If you didn't handle it well, how'd you handle it? Anybody?
I try to make people's heads explode, so I kind of set the bar.
Okay.
I kind of set the bar.
Anybody? Okay.
Sure.
Very good.
Right.
Okay.
Just self-examination. Yeah. Right.
Very good.
So sometimes sometimes actually the judgment can be a good thing in that case. It could be a good thing.
All right, I have a confession to make. I am a recovering
Don't-
Pharisee. Yes.
I thought you were about to say you're a recovering rule breaker. I was like, no, you're
No,
not.
I'm not a recovering rule breaker.
No, you're not.
No, but so I guess the story that sort of comes to mind when I was in high school, I was in a youth group. So you're youth minister, so you should relate to this. My world sort of revolved around my youth group, and I was very serious about it. And so when I was a freshman in high school, just got really attached to the church and to the youth group, and it was just sort of my avenue for growth and all that. It was also a big identity piece. It gave me something very.
Gave you swag.
It gave me swag. It wasn't necessarily the swag that I thought I wanted at the time, but it was something. Everybody sort of searches for an identity, so I got that. When I was a sophomore, we went on a mission trip. In fact, our youth group, we took a trip every single year. We went to places like New York, we went to Florida, but this sophomore year we went to England. We had an opportunity to spend a whole week in England. It was very cool. And it was actually on that trip that I had my call experience. I was invited. Someone said, "Hey, would you want to speak to some students?" And I thought, okay, well, that's fine. Well, I walk into this auditorium. There's 400 students there. And they just said, "Hey, you're from America. That just makes you cool. So just come say some stuff." And I really wasn't prepared for that whole thing. And in the middle of that, I was speaking, and it was almost like I was speaking and like the volume turned off on my head.
The dove descended.
It did. It was weird. It was like this light.
It did.
And I thought that I stopped speaking. And I got off the stage, and everybody said, "That was amazing." I was like, "What'd you do when I stopped?" And they said, "You didn't stop. You just sort of kept going." I thought I was like, "Wow, that's cool." So I sort of had this sort of holy mantle that I sort of wore and brought back. And one of the things that was interesting, we brought about 25 people on this trip. And it was in July. And so by the time you get through July, you get into August, then you're going back to school. And one of the things I started noticing is that I was still supercharged about this trip. I was still supercharged about this experience, and I was really sort of sending it through this filter of God had spoken to me and all of that. But I was also noticing there were a lot of people around me who went on this trip that they had this sort of high experience on this trip, but as they were getting closer to school, that started to wear off a little bit.
Oh, you became a buzzkill.
Yes, and and then you go into the beginning of school year, and then you start really getting annoyed because you kind of thought, well, I have this group, these friends around me. We're all super Christians, and they were kind of like, "Hey, man, why don't you chill out on that?" And I was like, wait a minute, we had this amazing experience over the summer, and so I started to have some difficulty handling that.
Did
and
you yell at people when they listen to DC Talk? You yelled at people when they
I
listen
did
to DC
listen
Talk,
to
did you?
yes. No. I
Did
like
you
DC
yell
Talk.
at them when they did? Oh no, you listened to it.
I mean, I was mad
You
at
were-
Amy. I was mad at Amy Grant.
So you were okay. So you were not only
So-
the Jesus freak
Well,
guy,
no,
you were also
she-
listening to Jesus freak.
In my Pharisaical mind, she crossed over without bringing the crossover. So I didn't know.
Oh my Lord.
I didn't know how to sort of process
boy.
that. So I quickly just resorted to judgmental. I was just like, you know what? You're not acting the way you should be acting. You were super Christian in the summer, but here we are back in the school year. You're not doing it right. You're not doing it the way that I was doing it. And I sort of just I was just sort of pointing my finger at everybody.
Sometimes pastors, by the way, like fully grown up pastors, like you go through this.
Yes.
You
Oh,
do.
yes.
And you kind of get mad at people, and then you
Yes.
go, oh, wait, they're all sinners like me.
Yeah. Well, you go through a thing, too. It's like, man, I expect you to be here every Sunday.
Yeah, like come every Sunday.
Yeah, but
Like, what are you
you
doing,
know-
man? I come. Oh, yeah.
Well, I get paid to come every Sunday.
I get paid
So-
to come. Oh,
So,
yeah.
but you're like, wait, where's everybody at? So there is easy. So one of the things that I started to process, there are two call stories in the book of Matthew, and the first one that arose for me was the one I liked. This was the story that I related to most often, and it comes out of Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 4. It starts with verse 18. And this was as a believer, this is sort of how I processed how you should respond to Jesus. And the story is very famous. You've probably heard it before. Verse 18 says, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Immediately they left their nets and followed him, and going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in the boat with Zebedee their father, mending their nets. And he called to them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Now, I loved that story. And the reason I love that story is because it was sort of clear cut. Jesus comes, you meet Jesus, you make a decision to believe, drop everything, change your life, and then you just start going. I love that story.
Yeah.
That was the sort of the simple way for me to process that. It was a simple way, like, hey, no looking back. You sort of have this altar call experience, and you just start going.
And I mean, I've had experiences like that with people where like I've explained the gospel to them, or like we talk about Jesus, and it is that simple. They're like, okay, that makes sense to me, but that's not for everybody.
That's not for everybody. In
not-
fact, it's probably not for most people.
right.
That story,
Right.
like it's recorded in Matthew for a reason, because it's a very cool story.
Mm-hmm.
I would almost say it's a miracle story because that's usually not how people come to faith.
And I've always thought of Peter. It's so funny that Peter is the one in particular that does that, because Peter is very stubborn at many different points in the Gospels, and this is the one time when he just listens.
Right,
Like, that's interesting.
right.
He would not be like, I would figure that like John or somebody else, like Judas, I don't know, would have been the person that did that.
Right.
Simple-minded person, right? Peter seems complex. He's going against the system.
Exactly.
Interesting.
But it's also sort of like the way most people come to faith, the way most people come to believe, it's over a period of time. That there's really nothing.
Little bricks in the foundation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's really nothing that maybe I'll say so. There's nothing I'm going to say tonight that's going to radically transform anybody. But
change me.
Oh, I know. But there is a process. I mean, there's a journey that we go on,
Yeah.
and really what the call stories in the New Testament sort of show is that sort of process where you start in this one place and you begin to sort of go through, and change happens over time.
Not even in the New Testament. I mean, think about the Old Testament and all the characters, the heroes in the Old Testament. Right? We think of David and look at where he starts, look at where he falls off, and then he comes back. And I mean, all of it's a process of faith. Like, faith is a process.
Yes, and it's not just your story that ends either, too. Like, so
Right.
you have this, you have this conversion experience, and then all of a sudden everything's fixed, everything's perfect, everything's okay in your life, and you just sort of keep moving forward from that.
No. Well, it's because it's not linear, right? There's hills and peaks and valleys and all sorts of things you have to go through, which sounds terrible, actually, when you say it like that.
Right.
It sounds bad.
Well, no, but listen, I've been in churches. And if I've done this as a pastor, I mean, I hope I've never done it. But there's a reality. Like, we try to sell Christianity that way. Like, we try to sell.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
hey,
people
come
call-
to Jesus,
Yeah.
and it's all going to be good. It's all going to be
Everything's fine. Yeah.
It's going to be rainbows and
People
and
call us fire insurance salesmen.
Yes.
Yeah. Like
take care
we're
of it.
selling fire insurance.
whatever problem you have, we will fix it in 20 minutes.
And we'll fix it in 20 minutes. And also, come serve in the nursery.
Yes.
By the way, come serve in the nursery.
Yes. After we fix your problem, come serve in the nursery.
Or not. Or not. Or not.
Now, there's this second story that shows up. And so the first one is sort of that miraculous story where you have, you know, the brothers. They're all just dropping their nets. They start walking with Jesus. But then you have this other story that shows up, and it is about It's about Matthew. Now, the book of Matthew is obviously written by Matthew, and it's the first gospel in the New Testament. It's the first book of the New Testament. And it's amazing, the first and foremost, on a historical level, that Matthew actually includes this story because he does not look very good.
Well, not only does he not look good, but, and we're going to talk about this here in a minute, but because he's Jewish, like, by the way, the apostles, they're all Jewish. It would be horrible to record that as a Jew himself, he
was
did
like
these
this.
things.
Yes. So, the way the story starts off, it's in Matthew chapter 9. And in verse 9, it says, "As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth." Now, he was a tax collector. And now, if you are a tax collector today, you're certainly not, a popular person if you work for the IRS or anything. I mean, I guess that's a good job.
I mean, yeah, and if you're doing people's taxes,
If you're doing people's taxes, that's
I mean,
a different thing.
that's a different thing.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess if you work for the IRS, I mean, people might not like you, but like,
If you get
again,
if you get a call that says, "I'm John from the IRS,"
do you know what's the most terrifying thing is if you ever get the phone call and it pops up, this might have happened to some of you, or some of you listening, where it pops up and it says IRS or Internal Revenue Services
Yeah.
on your phone. Has this happened to you?
Are they calling you?
All the time.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
That is
I'm
not good.
kidding. Come on.
But anyways, in the first century, this was especially troubling. What the Roman Empire did, and in all of the New Testament takes place under the Roman Empire. The Romans would sell the opportunity to be a tax collector. This was something that you could buy. You could sort of entrepreneur yourself into this. So people who
many
had the
did.
resources, they would buy the opportunity. And so what they would do is the Roman government would basically say, "Hey, we don't care what you do. We just need our cut." So if that tax is $10, you could collect $20. That's fine. You just need to make sure that you send us the $10. And they didn't really keep track of it. And so these tax collectors would buy these opportunities, and they would go out and they would collect taxes. And so there were taxes on everything. There was taxes on food, on livestock, on feed. There was taxes on ports. If you came into the port, there was a tax. If you left the port, there was a tax. There was a port for if you wanted to cross certain bridges. If you wanted to just turn the
If
corner.
you wanted to cross a bridge, yeah.
You just had to pay these taxes. And so the tax collector would often, he would have a few guards with him. He'd have a few Roman soldiers, centurions that would sort of be with him. And if you did not pay those taxes, then they would extract the tax. They would sort of take it from you. So there really wasn't a way to argue this. There wasn't an audit process. There wasn't anything like that.
No, and it wasn't just money either. So, like, if you said, sorry about it, you can't get blood out of a turnip, well, it wasn't just money. They would take your house. They would take your cow.
They would take your
they
family
they
members.
Would
They would
take
take-
your family members and sell them into slavery. Like, they would get what they needed. They would take you.
Yeah.
They would take you, and you would become a slave. I mean, like, you paid your taxes, and it was all arbitrary. This person is making this up. They're making it up and making serious bank off of doing this.
And so it was a common idea that, we didn't like tax collectors. You didn't like them. Sort of the level below that would be for any Jewish person to go into this business. We sort of expect the bad guys to be the Romans. We sort of expect the bad guys to be Gentiles, to be non-Jewish people. But in Jesus' culture, for those who are living in and around Jerusalem, for anyone who was Jewish to go into this business, you were just, the word is anathema. You were just, mothers wouldn't say your name. You weren't invited to watch the Browns. You were
You were
just
shunned.
bad.
I mean,
you were
you were
shunned.
shunned.
There was
You were.
no,
Yeah.
you didn't get to share the wings. Nothing. It was just bad. So this guy Matthew, he is Jewish, but this is his occupation. And somehow he had gotten enough money together, and he's sort of running this operation. He would sort of send out his little henchmen into the villages and collect taxes and all that, and everybody hated him. Everybody hated him and all tax collectors. So you sort of have that frame of mind. You go into this story, it says, and Jesus passed on from there. He saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And you would expect Jesus to say something to him. I mean, at least you sort of think it through our lens, you know, in terms of the way we approach somebody that doesn't agree with us. So I want you to first get that in mind. Get the person that you don't agree with in mind. Just one. I know you've got a bunch there that are lining up. So just the one person you don't agree with. And think about how you would approach them.
Anybody who drinks Dunkin'.
Dunkin's not bad. Continue. Moving on. Really.
I drink
When
Starbucks.
Jesus approaches him, you would think he would sort of give him a talking to. Like, listen, Matthew, what are you doing? Why are you here? You need to stop what you're doing. You need to change your behavior. I mean, I'm Jesus. I'm telling you this. You need to stop this. You need to change this. You need to give that money back. I can't believe you're doing this. I know your mom's disappointed. I mean, he could have done all that.
Or at the very least, make an example out of him to the others who were listening to him. I mean, at the very least,
Right.
you would think that, like, he would point this guy out and say, well, you guys don't want to be like him. I mean,
Right.
Or say at least, hey, we're not like him.
Exactly.
At the very least, you would expect that.
But what he does at this point, and he says to him, he says, follow me. He says, follow me. And he rose and followed him. Now, there's probably this moment, and what's amazing about the New Testament is it sort of compresses everything. So we don't get a whole lot of emotion. We don't get a whole lot of reaction. We don't get a whole lot of what the look on Peter's face was or anything like that. The disciples are probably all holding their breath going, I hope he doesn't say anything. Of course, this guy's not going to follow us. Of course, we're not going to hang out with this guy. But it says, and he rose and followed him.
And can I add some context to what this scene would have looked like? Let me add
Go.
some context. So when he says tax collector booth, this was set up near like the entrance to the city. Okay, so this isn't like it's some back alley shop.
No.
So there's tons of people around, and they all know what this guy's doing. They all know him because they walk by him every day.
Mm-hmm.
He extracts money from these people on a regular basis. He's hurting their family. He's, in some cases, like we said earlier, he's enslaving your family members. You all know who he is, and there is, at this point, probably a large crowd that's gathered. So this isn't like 2 or 3 people that are witnessing this.
Absolutely.
This is a very public thing that's about to happen. So think the worst person that you could think of is having this interaction with Jesus, and it's on like national television. Like everybody is watching this occur.
And they probably all thought he was going to say something. They probably, again, like you said.
And
they
it
were
would have
gonna make
made
an example.
sense.
Like, you need to stop doing this, all that. Not only does Jesus call him, and not only does he follow him, but the text moves very quickly into verse 10, and it says, and as Jesus reclined at table in the house. So what's happened here is not only has Jesus invited Matthew to follow him, they went over to Matthew's house. Now, if you look into the pages of the Old Testament, there are numbers of laws, there's numbers of rules where you were not allowed to go into somebody's house that was committing sin. There was all kinds of restrictions. So just the fact that Jesus is doing this. Now, Jesus does this often. There
All
are a
the
number
time.
of places where Jesus will simply say, like he says to Zacchaeus, hey, Zacchaeus, come down from the tree. We're going to your house. He just kind of invites himself into these situations. The disciples are probably losing their mind.
I heard a pastor say one time that Jesus spent more of his ministry unclean than clean. Because he was
That's
just
exactly
always
right.
around people who he was not supposed to be around. He
Exactly.
spent most of his ministry was spent unclean. He should have been in quarantine the majority of the time. I mean, he literally was with people he shouldn't be in as a good Jew all the time.
And as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. So you have to get this picture. Everyone's sort of hanging out. Now, the reason that there's all these sinners and tax collectors in this room is because this is the only group that they could hang out with. Because they don't have friends, they don't have family, the only person that a tax collector is going to hang out with is another tax collector.
Their club.
Okay? Their clone, yes. So that is it. There's their little club, and that's who they find solace with. And there was one historian that I read that wrote that, like, the tax collectors didn't even give offerings. They didn't
Right.
even go to the temple. They didn't do sacrifices because they kind of all assumed, well, I'm going to hell anyways. I don't want to do anything even remotely religious. I'm just going to sort of take myself out of society. And so Jesus is hanging out here with these people.
That'd been an interesting band to like go to a dinner party with.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like that would have been kind of an interesting scene, and Jesus is in the middle of it.
And so verse 11, and when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? They haven't gone into the house. The Pharisees are sort of outside of the house. So you sort of have to get this, like they're probably outside. They're probably motioning for Peter to come out. Peter comes out and like, I don't know why we're here. I don't know what's, there's all this sort of commotion that there's not
paparazzi.
just the party that's in the house. There's people outside looking in the windows. There's a huge commotion that is going on. And when Jesus had heard it, so there's this conversation between the Pharisees and whoever's relaying this information. Jesus is having a good time. He gets up and he walks out because he had heard what they were talking about. Like, hey, what are you guys discussing? What's going on? It says, when he heard it, he said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. And that's an interesting thought. He says, look, I didn't come here to help healthy people. I came here to help those that are in need. There's a little bit of an insult because
It is.
well, Matthew's right here,
Right.
and the tax collectors are right here.
It's also an insult on the other side. I was thinking about this after this morning when you said this. I was thinking about this. It's an insult on the inverse as well, and here's why. Because Jesus is helping people who are sick, right? Like these people are sinners, right? They're sinning. They're doing bad things. But they're humble enough to admit that they need the help. The Pharisees, many times Jesus calls them out. The Pharisees aren't humble enough to admit that they have problems. So it's an insult as well that you don't need Jesus.
Oh, exactly.
You don't need Jesus because you've already declared yourself to be perfect. And by the way, many of us live in that spot on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And so it's sort of interesting that when he says this, I mean, Matthew doesn't react. Like, I can almost picture the Pharisees, not the Pharisees, the tax collectors, they're all hearing this, and there's this moment of shock. And then there's that one dude in the back of the room that you always bring to the party. There's one dude in the back of the room, it's like, we're all sinners, rock on! And they're just continuing.
Yeah, like they're just partying. Yeah, they're
having
just
a good time.
going. They're like, what's up?
Yeah.
That's me.
And they've sort of claimed it. They sort of I recognize, we're the sick ones.
We're sick. We're eating wings. Get away.
So Jesus says, go and learn what this means. And he's giving this example to the Pharisees. He's actually quoting from the prophet Hosea. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy
Which is
and
also an
not
insult.
sacrifice. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I came not to call the righteous, but sinners.
It's an incredible insult to tell the Pharisees who knew everything about the Old Testament that there was to know. Go and learn
Go
what
and
this
learn
means.
anything. Go
Like,
and
that's
learn
hilarious. Like, these people spent their entire life from the time that they were children. They would spend memorizing the entire Torah, which means that they would memorize incredible amounts of material, like the entire Old Testament. To tell them to go and learn what this means is like, that's like telling somebody with multiple PhDs to do that. You just
Right.
wouldn't do it. You just wouldn't do it.
So this is where it lands for me, because I am a Pharisee.
Congratulations.
Yes, I own that. How does this passage sort of hit you? How does this passage, when you recognize, and what I would like to do, I like to put myself, like whenever I'm reading a Jesus story, I like to put myself in the Jesus spot because it makes me feel
You're that
good.
guy.
I like to think, oh, I'm one of the disciples, or I'm one of these other people. When you really realize that this story is about me,
You begin to think that you aren't the tax collectors. You aren't Jesus. You aren't even the disciples in this story. You're the Pharisees. Looking in, having it told from the perspective of the tax collectors. So Matthew is recounting this story, and we, as the readers now, 2,000 years later, we're actually in the spot, really, of the Pharisees. And it is a call to action of that. The way that this story hits me is that last part when he says, go and learn what this means, that Jesus requires, or he wants from us to have mercy rather than sacrifice. A lot of us are really good at sacrifice. Like, we sacrifice for a lot of things. I do this, by the way, in my relationships, in my job. I sacrifice all the time. Like, I'm good at sacrificing. I will stay longer. I will do the extra thing. I'll try to be thoughtful. I'll do that. I don't mind sacrificing or inconveniencing myself. To admit that I need mercy is almost the word anathema to me.
right?
Like, I will be the martyr. Don't tell me that I'm wrong and I need mercy. That's painful for me. To need mercy is painful, because that means that not only have I done something that's not good or it's wrong, but somebody's just going to ad hoc just forgive me for that and just say, I'm not going to give you what you deserve. That is not something that's in my DNA to be able to accept. So as I read this and I'm thinking of myself in the spot of the Pharisees, to understand that not only was the worldview that they looked through, the worldview that I sometimes look through, that it was wrong. Not just that, but that I need mercy. They needed mercy to be able to change that, and Jesus was the only thing that could provide that. It's incredible to think about.
And so in this week, I want you to go back mentally for a second. I want you to think about that person. So that person that you thought of 10 minutes ago. And how does this passage land for you? How are you supposed to interact with that person this week? What are you going to do this week that's different? What are you going to do this week that might be uncomfortable? Now, for those who know this, today is World Communion Sunday. And when we come to the communion table, this is one of the things that we do. We recognize everything that Jesus has done for us. We recognize this is something that he institutes just hours before he is arrested. He's telling his disciples a few last things, but one of the things he wants to reiterate over and over and over again is this new commandment that I give you, which is about love. Love one another. Make sure that those around you see this. This is how they will know who you are as a believer.
This is a form of mercy, by the way.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a form of mercy.
To not just love. It's like, okay, I love you, I'm not going to kill you.
Right.
But to show them mercy, to show them kindness,
You're
to show all
you're
of
accepted in.
Exactly.
Like that's communion.
Could you sit down in the room with that person, whoever that person is, or that group of people? And what has been interesting over the, it sort of happens in election years and all that, is that we are told, well, you can't like this group of people. This is a group of people you shouldn't like. This group of people thinks differently than you. Can you be in a space where you can do what Jesus does? And so I'm going to encourage you, if you are present with us in the room, you should have a little communion cup. We've had to adjust communion this year. We would normally do it with bread and a chalice and
These
all
little
of that.
things are interesting.
They are. If you can't see this online, this is it's like a little shot glass.
It's a little tiny one
Yes.
with a top that has a lid, but it's
Yes.
not a lid. It's a fake lid.
It's a fake lid that holds the bread.
It's good.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to, if you will, just take off that top part.
By the way, this is the most nerve-wracking thing for pastors when you have to do this in front
I
of
know.
people.
Have to open this.
It's horrible.
But Jesus says, this little wafer, this little thing, this is my body, which is broken for you. I want you to take this. I want you to consume this. I want you to do this in remembrance of me. Not that we just won't forget who Jesus is, but that we won't forget what he taught us, what he said to us. So we take this, we do this in remembrance of him. So take it. In the same way, he takes the cup and he says, this is the blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for the forgiveness of sins. And what's amazing is I love the idea of God forgiving my sin. But when we look at that story that we just went through, it's not just forgiveness to me, but it's forgiveness of those who annoy me, for those that I cannot stand, for those that are on a whole different spectrum for me. It's forgiveness for them as well. And so in that remembering for what God has forgiven me for, it goes back to that idea of mercy. It goes back to that idea of love. So if you'll take this and drink. These are the gifts of God for the people of God. Let's pray. God, we thank you for everything that you have given to us. Everything that you've blessed us with, everything that you have shown up in our lives about. God, we pray that we would be able to reflect that back. And even though the world has sort of explained to us that we have to have lines, and we have to not like these people or this group or this section over here, that you went right into it. You went and found those that were willing to follow you, but you also went after the tax collectors and the sinners. You went after me. In a process that doesn't make me a Pharisee, it should make me a follower of you. God, we know that the process of following you is not just something that's instantaneous, but it's something that can take time. So as we continue to follow you, may we continue to reach out to those that need to know that you are present. The only way that they will know that is through our witness to them. And all this we pray in your name. Amen.
Hungry I come to you, for I know you satisfy. I am empty, but I know your love does not run dry. So I wait for you. So I wait for you. I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. Broken, I run to you, for your arms are open wide. I am weary, but I know your touch restores my life. So I wait for you. 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 I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, I know your love does not run dry. So I wait for you. 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 I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. I can see the promised land, though there's pain within the plan. There is victory in the end. Your love is my battle cry. My fears like Jericho build their walls around my soul. When my heart is overthrown, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, that nothing is impossible with you. There is hope within the fights, in the wars that wage inside. Though the shadows steal the light, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, that nothing is impossible with you. No greater name, no higher name, no stronger name than Jesus. You overcame, broke every chain, forever reign, King Jesus. No greater name, no higher name, no stronger name than Jesus. You overcame, broke every chain, forever reign, King Jesus. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, that nothing is impossible. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, that Have a great week, everybody. See you next week, same time. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth.